Hey kids, Lisa here, hashtagging away, and today diving into the Seven of Swords, which is a card I'm actually pretty excited to talk about. Um, this is a card that I only cozied up to really recently, in August, in fact. A card that, it just sort of, those cards where you sort of, you know how to read them more or less, you make sense of them in a spread because that's what the brain does. This is something that Enrique Enriquez calls irresistible illusion. Like, we can't help, our brains are such that we can't help but make sense of stuff. So if I'm reading for myself or reading from another, I'm going to weave a narrative that pulls in all the elements. I can't help but see meaning in the world. I'm going to do that. My brain is going to do that. And it's kind of irresistible. So, Seven of Swords, I made sense of it in all the readings where it's appeared for me and for others. But I never really felt like I dived that like quantum level deeper into the card's meaning, where I really got it, like got it. And you know what I mean? Do you know those moments when you feel like you've just kind of stepped up a whole new level, or plunged down a whole new level with understanding a card, and the card then becomes yours in a way that it hadn't been before? So that happened to me this August in interpreting my August card of the month, and I've talked about this before in a video. I can't remember which one, but the Seven of Swords in Kim Kranz's deck. Suddenly, for me, I saw the ways in which this is a card that is all about our ability to see the big picture, or potentially our ability potentially to see the big picture and to decide to make an active decision, to conceal, to withhold, to be strategic. For someone like me, I'm just a blurter. I just say, I find it really hard to keep secrets. I find it really hard not to just like, whoa, bare my heart at every moment. And, that could be a positive value of mine, but it's also something that's just it can also be really selfish, and it can also be very unhelpful. And the idea that I might withhold, that I might conceal in a way that is skillful and compassionate, that I might sit on the sword of truth, observe a little decorum, observe a little discretion, be strategic in what I share. That became really important for me in August. And that helped me reinterpret even the imagery of Pixie's deck. Here, this is the borderless Waite-Smith, where we got this goofy guy tiptoeing away, looking over his shoulder, taking what he can. Oddly enough, not taking everything, right? That's sort of interesting about this card. Like, what does it mean to have this partial deception, this partial concealment? I think what Kim Kranz's deck made me realize, and this, by the way, is the third edition, the mass-produced edition. I have all three, but actually this is the one that I read with. I like the cardstock for reading. I like being able to shuffle it more easily. Anyway, what this card helped me see is that, that the card that is thought of as the theft card or the deception card might also be the restraint card, the card where we hold back, and we hold back for good reasons, and maybe even for deeply compassionate reasons. The card of keeping our own counsel, right? Not always being completely transparent. That reading was helped also by my thinking through, I've talked a lot about in these past sword videos about the relationship between justice, the trump of justice, and the suit of swords. And actually Kim Kranz, people knock her guidebook, but I think sometimes it's a pretty damn smart take on the cards, and I like what she says about justice. She says, with tails entwined, two cats look directly at you, waiting for you to choose between them, which is right and which is wrong. The justice card implies a weight or heaviness surrounding a choice you have to make. Now is not the time to shun the concept of divine balance or karma. All of your choices affect your life, and sometimes lives around you, both now and in the future. The Justice card implies a weight or heaviness surrounding a choice you have to make. So, I'm not sure that I would always want to talk about this card as being about choice, but I like the sense of it being about responsibility and weight. Like, it's on us to make decisions. It's on us to assess a situation. It's on us to look at the 7 swords and to maybe realize that we're going to take 5 and leave 2, or that, there's a certain truth here, a certain cutting fact or cutting circumstance, and we're going to conceal that. The image of justice with its even-handed balance is an image of us taking it upon us to decide what is right and what is wrong. Like to weigh our lives and to weigh our world and to make a decision and then to live with the consequences, right? It would be actually, I think, delusion and naivete of the worst order for us to think that somehow we don't have to make choices, or we don't, like for us to think, I'm just being completely out there and open and honest. There are always things that we're holding back. Even when we're trying to be completely transparent, there are always ways in which we are wielding our skillful or not so skillful sword to shape the situation, to tip the scales one way or t'other. And I think that the suit of swords and the card of the 7 is asking us to actually be really rigorously honest with ourselves about what we're doing. Or to look at least at the situation and imagine that there is no position from which everything is an even playing field and everything is exposed. That there's always something that's hidden or something that's being tipped one way or tipped the other. And that those moments reveal the choices that human agents make. So we should be aware of our choices. Now, the deck that I wanted to focus on for, I'm looking for the title card. I can't find it, is the Bohemian Gothic. And I have the 2013, I guess it is, edition, the most recent edition, which I got. I mean, I like Baba Studios, but man, they are spendy. So this is the only deck I have of theirs, and I bought it because they were selling it for $40 in an unboxed version, and I got the unboxed version. And it's a deck that I find really witty and funny and interesting and smart. But I haven't spent a huge amount of time. I've only done a few readings with it, and I haven't really played with it. So it's one of those decks, I got it last year and stuck it into a drawer and mostly don't use. But I pulled it out to think about the swords. And what I like about, the whole premise of this deck is that the kind of dark Gothic world here is a world that helps us explore the shadow side of these cards. And I love that impulse, the impulse to get into the shadow and to see the full 360-degree potential of meaning of these cards. And I love, oh, this is actually a beautiful card, the 6 of Swords. I love the ways in which this deck also invites us, we'll come back to the 7 in a minute, also invites us into this world that's a little bit over the top, or a lot over the top. And it's over the top because the world of our unconscious, of shadow and nightmare, the world of the Gothic, is a world that takes us into strange illusions and connections and images that exceed the bounds of what our normal conceptions allow. So, of course it's over the top. And it's funny, it's creepy, it's darkly beautiful. Yeah, the Bohemian Gothic. You guys, most of you know this deck pretty well, or a lot of you do, I think. But the 7 of Swords, okay? So what's being indicated here? The little white book is really helpful, and I think the straight meanings aren't very helpful in the little white book, but the ones that are listed as the shadow meanings, the more hidden meanings, I think are really spot on and interesting. So the Seven of Swords, darker shadow or more hidden meanings. A dangerous theft or subterfuge. Mixing with things you don't fully understand. Stealing something that you think you will put to better use. Bringing revenge or retribution down upon yourself. Being duped into a very foolish act. So the little girl stealing, the grimoire, like, ooh, I'll just play with this little book. What could go wrong? Right? The beginning of, the midnight horror show. What could go wrong? What I like about this reading is the way in which it takes us into a world where, we act as if we can see the big picture and we weigh the elements of the puzzle to the best that we can. And it's a world where we often make decisions like, I'll just keep this little piece of information back. I'll just restrain myself on this. I'll just rob Peter over here to pay Paul over there, where we balance the world and we make choices and we say things like, well, the ends will justify the means, or they don't know what to do with this, but I do. I'll put it to better use, where we make those kinds of decisions. Now, the Justice card and a kind of straight non-shadow reading of the Seven of Swords, I think, invites us to say, yeah, you've got to make those decisions. We don't have complete knowledge, but we often act as if we do, even though that's impossible for us humans, for limited beings. Our view of the world is always partial. I'm only able to see from my perspective, fully and clearly. But I got to act on the basis of what I know, and I will assess and weigh the possibilities accordingly. That's the sort of non-shadow reading, the reading of the Seven of Swords that learns from the card of justice about what it means to weigh our actions and make our choices and then live with our karma. The shadow side reminds us of the deep, deep folly involved in acting as if we know better, because we don't. So we make decisions. We say, oh, I'll take this part of it. I'll take these 5 swords. They don't need them, right? I'll take this grimoire. What could go wrong? Yeah. So I guess, in the end, it's like this combination of like an awareness of our ignorance, like I don't know what the right answer is, and also an acknowledgement that nonetheless I have to act. Nonetheless, even a non-decision is a decision. Even doing nothing is doing something. So in that context, right, sometimes the fox has to lie on the sword. Sometimes the fox has to lie. We can never be 100% transparent, even if we want to be, because there are things about our own motivations that we might not know. So maybe the best we can aspire to, and maybe this is in the end one of the lessons of the Seven of Swords, maybe the best we can aspire to is knowing that we simply don't know. And yet, that's no excuse. Ignorance is no excuse. We still have to make our choices and then live with the consequences. Yeah, the Seven of Swords. It's kind of a grown-up card, It's like a card that's saying, yep, okay. And that's why I think, it's perfect that this is a child. Because we have problems with this card when we don't acknowledge our own full adulthood, right? We got to do it. We got to do what we can with what we know. All right. I think that's all I got. Yeah, as always, thank you guys so much for joining me, and blessings to you. I'll see you later.